And good morning once again and welcome back. As we mentioned prior to the commercial break, we are going to be discussing the issue of road safety, and as such we are joined by three individuals who are going to be discussing everything as it concerns being able to traverse safely across Belize's highways, our streets and our roads. With that said, we have Ms. Mavis Johnson. Good morning.
Good morning.
She's the International Road Safety Consultant. We also have Mr. Tirso Galvez, the Chief Transport Officer. Good morning, Mr. Galvez.
Good morning, sir.
And of course, we are joined by PeterWilliams. He is a Traffic Warden as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
And that should tell you a little bit about how comprehensive this project is. So before we jump into that conversation, I kind of want to start off with you, Mavis, so that you could just give us a quick overview about how the project is going.
The project is going very well. There have been a few hurdles along the way that needed to be overcome in doing the infrastructure because before some of the infrastructure improvements could be done, the side slopes had to be filled in and all the drop-offs, and a lot of things had to be done to the actual road itself before we could put markings on. But all the components of the project are going very well. Okay. As you know, the project has included all the aspects that contribute to safer roads, and that's not just the roads themselves, but it's about safer vehicles. We're trying to get people and encourage them to buy newer vehicles because they have more safety features. And we want people to wear the seatbelts in those vehicles, in the front and in the back, even though we don't have legislation, but it is important if you're sitting in the vehicle at all. And also the importance of having children in proper seats so that they're not flying around in case of a crash. We purchased 2 highway patrol vehicles through the project. We have had education in the schools. We developed a curriculum for the schools along the corridor, and we're talking about the corridor, the Western Highway, the George Price Highway between Belize City and Belmopan. It includes the ring road as well in Belmopan. Also the fifth pillar, if you like, of this integrated approach is the ambulance, or the post-crash response, so that if somebody does end up in a collision, they can be quickly addressed with an ambulance and taken to wherever they need to go to for further treatment. And that has included also, it's not just a case of providing those material things, but people have to be trained and we have to share knowledge. So a lot of capacity building has taken place over the last 3 years. And where this project now will transition is into a longer term plan. And we're setting the stage for many activities that will be undertaken in the next 10 to 15 years, including how drivers are put on the road and allowed on the road in the first place, because it's a privilege to drive. It's just not a right when you get to that age when you think, well, it's my turn to drive now. And so there's going to be improvements to the system that allows people to come on the roads. And a lot of the activities we talk about in capacity building do take a lot longer. Even the children's education, it's lifelong learning. It's not just something we teach to the very young children who are going to school for the first time. But it's lifelong learning. And just to respond directly to your question about how is it going, in the 4 years that I've been coming to Belize, I do see improvement. We passed cyclists coming this morning in the dark that had lights on. We see people with the reflective vests on. We see people wearing seatbelts that perhaps we didn't see before. So we've seen change, and you only have to look at the highway that has been improved to see that there is a lot more markings, signage, curve delineation, guardrail that prevent people from running off the road. And so I have personally seen a lot of change in the time I've been here, and that's resulting in fewer people being involved in crashes and in fatalities particularly.
That's
And that was the
interesting that
purpose.
you would say that. I hate to have to delve right in, but when you look at everything that has been put in place, you look at certain behavior change as well. You mentioned that you have cyclists who are out on the road very early. They have their reflectors on their bicycles. They're wearing clothing that reflects light. You can see them from a distance. You also have pedestrians who take necessary precautions when they're walking along these roads. However, the instances of road traffic fatalities, when you look at 2016, for instance, it seems relatively high despite all of these measures being put in place. So while the behavior change is seemingly among cyclists and pedestrians, maybe the drivers are also in need of some education or awareness when it comes to speeding, drinking and driving, or other, I would say, impediments, so to speak. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, and again, the focus of this work has only been on the George Price Highway, and we're quite confident about the figures of the numbers of people who die in crashes there. It is less than it was when we started the project. In fact, until December last year, it would have been the lowest number of fatalities at all on that highway, and it was 6. And sadly, in December, there were 2 fatalities. So the fatalities on that corridor were 8.
Because you're looking only from Belize City to about mile 25, all the way to Belmopan and the Ring Road.
And that's what we call the demonstration corridor. And it's on that corridor that we are showing the effectiveness of having all of these disciplines working together.
Right.
Now, and people say, well, you know, what about the Hummingbird Highway or the Northern Highway? Well, this has set a new standard now for road infrastructure, for enforcement across the country, for the extra ambulances and the medical responders that can be there, people who are trained as emergency responders. And so these things are now, once this demonstration corridor has shown the effectiveness and set this new standard, then all the other highways will be built and improved with the same safety features in the road, the same non-engineering measures, if you like enforcement and public education and campaigns, children's school programs. But you can't, when you start a road safety project, even in a small country like this, you can't just do everything at once.
For sure.
Because it all takes time. So you start small, if you like. But this, and in fact, when the corridor project started, about 50% of all fatalities in the whole country were on that one highway. Where we are now is that only about 10% of the fatalities for the whole of the country are on that corridor. So it shows that what is and has started is working.
For sure, and it also shows that there's been a shift in the mentality because, of course, in our country, we're not used to the culture of wearing your seatbelts or being actively aware, we're defensive drivers. So we just drive because we just need to get where we are. And I think that the change also needs to come in policy. So I want to shift over to you, Tirso. So you could tell us about what the government is doing to make sure that persons are aware of the new requirements and the standards that we're trying to set as it relates to road safety.
Okay, good morning, television viewers, and good morning, you all. Thanks for having us this morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here with Ms. Mavis and my Mr. Williams, who is an enforcement officer. As we had mentioned earlier before the show, that basically this whole project has different components, right? As we have always said that first we used to talk about the 3 E's, which would have been the education, the enforcement, and the infrastructure. And we have implemented the emergency response and also the evaluation and monitoring. And so, but for my part, as the Chief Transport Officer, with the responsibility for transport itself, having enforcement staff, we are not the only the only agent or the only department or unit that is responsible for enforcement. However, we do have a responsibility at the national level, and our enforcement people, we have in all districts to carry out enforcement and also to assist with education. We have seen things being put in place, infrastructure. We have seen road marking. We have seen cat eyes, roundabouts. And so one of our plans for this year is to make some legislative changes in respect to some of these amenities that have been put in place. We need to put in there now the use of the roundabout, how you go about using the rules for the roundabout.
That's true, that's right.
We need to put in there the legislative changes for the road marking, for example. We have been telling people, and that's where the education process is, we have been telling people what these road markings are, what the solid line means, what the dotted lines mean. But now we go further now. Like I said, as Ms. Mavis mentioned, we're going by phases, education, then we put in the laws. We cannot just go and enforce. We need to educate people about these changes.
And I kind of want to put a pin in there, and I know a lot of people are probably going to hate me after I ask this question, especially young drivers who are about to take their test. When it comes to learning to drive, a lot of people, they learn from home. There is not a school that you go to, or people don't necessarily hire an instructor to teach them to drive. And I think that's where, even though it's a good bonding experience for the mom and the son, or the father and the daughter, whoever, that person might not be aware of the new regulations, new standards that are being put in place. So what would be the next step as it relates to the traffic department and transport and the ministry to put into place official or formal lessons, or a formal structure in learning to drive, and also the written test that you have to take?
Okay, in respect to that, I must say that we have been working on a safe driver's manual. And that is soon to be published or to come out. We are just working on some of the what we call it. What happened is that it was being produced by somebody who was not from Belize, and so we are trying to make it more Belizean, so
localized.
that localized. Yeah. Okay, so basically that's where we are. But this will be used nationally by the national transport and the municipalities, because it was done with the municipality and the transport department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Peter, as an enforcer, as a traffic warden, what is one of the most frequent violations that you've come across when monitoring the different thoroughfares across the country? Seatbelts.
That is one of the most prevalent offense. Coming back to the issue of education, for some reason people don't realize that seatbelt can actually save your life, and so we often stress upon it. We conduct several surveys on a daily basis that we feed into our statistical database. So that is the main offense, and sometimes, no matter how much times you would ask somebody politely to wear their seatbelt, they would normally be like, "Oh, I've been driving for 30 odd years. You can't tell me how to." So you meet a lot of resistance at the end of the day.
Creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you then, when I know that's your job. I know for a lot of people, they don't like traffic officers because they feel like it's a waste of time. Why are you stopping me? I'm being safe. I'm just on my way to work or wherever. How do you deal with that ingrained mentality of I doing what I want? How do you address that?
It all has to do with approach, because one thing that we've learned through our trainings and different things like that, whenever you stop somebody at a vehicle checkpoint or during a random patrol stop, you need to be mindful that this person, you don't know what this person is going through. This person probably had a bad day, and you're just making it worse. So the approach that we take would be, we stop them, bid them the time of the day, be very courteous and polite to them. Many times we take that approach and we still get cursed out and different things like that, but we still try to be assertive about the situation, and we would first highlight the offense to them, and then we would politely let them know, okay, well, the offense has been committed, and so now we need to issue you a violation ticket for the offense, or depending on the severity of the offense, they might be charged summarily for that offense. So it's not always the issuance of a violation ticket.
Yeah.
We do charge people and take them to court summarily for that offense.
Okay, so since you have the platform of the OIE cameras, what would you like to encourage the public to know, especially when you're doing your job, especially as it relates to the resistance that you might get? What's something that you'd like to say in order to encourage them to be a little bit more cooperative?
Well, quite a few things come to mind. I need to select my words wisely. I would like people to know that we're out there to try to help people to try to reduce the amount of fatalities. I go to several different institutions to talk about road safety, and one of the things that I normally stress on is that when we report and we give our statistics, you might look at it and see numbers, but I always stress to people those numbers represent lives that has been lost, and people fail to realize even if your life was not lost, but you got injured, you might be the breadwinner for this family. Right. And so then what happens then, you know, so people need to really take it seriously, because oftentimes it's not until you're in that position, you know, laying in that hospital bed, and you're like, I should have known, I should have done something else. But don't wait until then, be proactive, you know. So we're not out there to spoil anybody's day, we're not out there to offend anybody, to disrespect anybody, but we're just, you know, because majority of the times, when we meet offenses committed, we would talk to the persons, and we have our notebook that we normally use when we go to court. Because, like, let's say I meet you today, I would document, okay, I met you at this day, at this time, committing this offense. So when I meet you again, I could go back to my notebook and say, okay, I already met you before, I'm going to issue a violation ticket. So it's not always that we're just going to issue the violation ticket. Right. So we're trying to introduce, to educate them.
Now, in terms of emergency response, it's very critical to the work that is being done in terms of being able to respond in a prompt and timely manner in the instance or in the event of a traffic accident. I won't say fatality, but people get pretty banged up, and you guys need to be able to respond immediately to deal with that. How has that been in terms of, one, the response time, your ability to dispatch from wherever location and respond to the scene, and being able to manage the situation on the ground once there?
Well, again, the ambulances were strategically placed so that nobody would be more than about 30 minutes away from having an ambulance available, should it be required to take somebody to the hospital. But there's sort of three phases that we look at in post-crash response, and one is treating people at the scene. You don't need an ambulance person to do that. Yeah. We need all drivers to know what to do at the scene of a crash to prevent the situation worsening. And in fact, I have worked in some countries where all drivers have to have a first aid certificate, and they have to carry a first aid kit in their car, because often they are the people, the next person along the road is the first responder.
Yeah.
And so the more people that can be trained to be first responders, they don't need to belong to an ambulance unit, but certainly BERT have done a very good job in trying to train people, and the Ministry of Health, we've had personnel that have been for additional training. Yeah. And then we need to have the people who are driving the ambulances to be certified. We don't have paramedics as such yet, but we want ultimately in this long-term plan, we would like to have people certified as paramedics, and so that they can do more than just stop the bleeding and ensure that they're still breathing, and move them to hospital where somebody else is going to look after them. And so there's that stage in the process. Then there's when they get to the hospital, and there's two things that we need there, and one is an emergency area where doctors and nurses are specifically skilled in road trauma, how they actually are going to manage this. And then the last step in that whole system like a trauma management system, is how do we rehabilitate them?
Yeah.
And I had been here once a couple of years ago, and there had been a fatality. And in addition to this fatality, one of the young people was left as he was not able to walk anymore and would spend the last of his life in a wheelchair. And I was actually flying home at the weekend as this surgeon who came from the States. He came to do surgeries, and he had actually operated on this young man.
Oh, wow.
And we talked a lot about, he was from the States, I'm from Canada, and we talked about how challenging it is for people in those countries to have their life just changed in a way that will never will be an improvement. And but here, I couldn't even think about how difficult it would be for somebody who had to spend the rest of their life in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And so these are long-term consequences, and sometimes it's just that somebody made a mistake. One of the issues we all talk about now is distracted driving.
Yeah.
And I hear about people.
Yeah.
It's no different in the country I'm from. People on the phone, people are texting while they're driving, and you can't afford to do that. Every second that you're behind the wheel, your focus needs to be on that task, not doing all the other things.
Yeah.
And it can be a second in just checking to see who that message was from, or who that Facebook message was from.
Yeah.
And the next thing, the collision has occurred, or the child ran out and that wasn't seen. And so those little things are things that we really need to also educate people about, is that you need to pay attention to the driving task. And a lot of people, and it's like wearing the seatbelt, because it's so rare that they're going to get a ticket or be involved in a crash, they think, well, the law doesn't mean anything and I'm safe. I sped along this highway every day for the last 40 years and never been in a crash.
Yeah.
And so they don't see any negative consequences to their bad behavior.
Yeah.
And so that's something else we need to change, and that's what we call changing a traffic safety culture, that people think about their responsibility as a driver, whether it's as a profession. We have bus drivers carrying buses of people who are driving erratically on the highways, or not obeying the law, or allowing the people to stand on the bus. And they just don't realize all these lives are in their hands.
Yeah.
And so they are a really important. Taxi drivers, 3 or 4 people might be in a taxi and the driver's drunk. That's unacceptable.
I think part of the issue from the layman's perspective is that they rely on a false sense of situational awareness, to where they see the vehicle approaching and they figure, well, it's still a safe distance, maybe I could quickly check my phone or something. And in that split second, the fact that they're driving and the other vehicle is approaching, you're covering that distance in a fairly short time, despite how far away it may have seemed in the beginning. And it's in that split second that things do happen.
Exactly. It has been proven where for you to text one sentence, you would travel more than the length of a football field, and so that in itself is telling you that
that kind of puts things into perspective.
that just the time that you would take to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, what could happen along those lines, So.
Yeah. Because your attention is between looking at the road and looking at the phone and still driving.
I'm really just thinking about how you're going to really alter that culture, and especially as it relates to the implementation of legislation and ticket violations. How do you justify to Belizeans that when we roll this out, whether it be issuing tickets for not wearing a seatbelt or issuing tickets for being on your phone while driving, how do you say to them, I know that this is what we've been doing for the past however long years, but moving forward, this is how we're going to do it now? How do you make sure that that is as smooth as a transition as it needs to be?
Well, again, like I said, we have to do that education. We have to show people, from other instances what are the result of these practices. And at the end result, basically, I mean, it's the loss of life. I mean, you can't replace, and it's like, I mean, this was the last text that I received. I mean, when you go to the scene and obviously you see the phone there, and that was the text. It was because they were texting, you know, could show people that this was a result of that. I mean, you know, I believe that the police, because the police is the one that does the investigation, I think the police need to come out more
and highlight
these things when they go to the accident scene. They don't just go to the accident scene and take for granted. If you see a telephone there, you need to check those things and see if at the time of the incident was this person texting, and so that people that bring this forth, because we need to project these things, you know, and to show that this is as a result of texting.
And it's not only drivers of cars and trucks and buses, it's motorcyclists as well are doing it,
sure.
cyclists, pedestrians. We have a lot of distracted pedestrians, especially those that got earbuds in and they're, you know, listening to their phone or whatever they're doing, or music. And of course, as long as they've got the earbuds in, they don't know what's happening behind them. So it's, I know we're focusing here on drivers, but it's all road users, and that needs to be stressed too, because everybody's a pedestrian at some time in their life. And I think one of the future things is educating young people, because if we can educate them when they're 5 or 6, when they're just forming their habits and their whole approach to life and how they need to be a bit more responsible. I think it does start at that very young age. And in fact, I know from in other places where the children have been the educators for the parents. The children have been said, you can't start the car, Daddy, you haven't got your seatbelt on, or something like that. And so children are very good educators of parents. On the texting and the phone, I really believe that the industry that provides the cell networks also have to be part of the solution. And I've always said that I think it's technology is going to be the thing that's really going to change this. Because even in Canada, the fines for using a phone are extortionate, but young people somehow continue to pay these extortionate prices. But I think that technology, and I know that there's work being done to stop the phones being accessible. A bit like when you're on an aeroplane and you actually put it on airline mode. Well, you have to actually do that yourself. But this company are actually testing how they can prevent the signal from actually coming into the vehicle in the first place. And I do think, you know, ultimately that's where the benefit is going to be, is from the people who provide the service and the phones to do their bit.
We're not there yet. Not all of us are there yet locally, but when you look at the technology, as you mentioned, and you look at some of the vehicles that are being manufactured, some have features that allow you to do a hands-free call, for instance. You're speaking directly into a microphone inside the vehicle. You're not literally holding the phone in your hands while still trying to steer. We're not fully there yet insofar as those of us who are motorists who own vehicles and are traveling often. We don't really get to enjoy the luxury of that as yet. My question, are we hardlined on the idea of click it or ticket? Where do we stand on that, insofar as seatbelts are concerned?
The last year's mandatory use of seatbelts while on any highway, and so for the driver and the front seat passenger as of right now, and we are very strict about it, like I mentioned. But at the same time, a lot of people in Belize claim that, oh, I had no idea and this and that. So we try our best to find that fine line between. We meet hundreds of people on the road every day. Sometimes it's the same people pass every day. So we try to not be too aggressive. We have to find that balance. So like I mentioned, we would document it as best as possible. And then when we meet you again, then we could say, okay, you know what, we've talked to you before, and then we need to deal with you for the offense. And we find that people are more receptive to us doing it that way, because then they accept that they're in the wrong. Because then we are ready. But sometimes we do meet people who we would just ticket right away, because sometimes you meet people who they will just let you know, just issue me the ticket and let me go.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, here's a violation ticket, and a lot of people feel like, okay, I'm just going to get this ticket and nothing is going to come out of it, and that is where the shock comes in. Because then when they get, a knock and the police is there because they didn't appear to court, because the ticket is a summons, and so we don't need to go and look for you again to summons you to go to the court. And so then that's when the reality kicks in for them, and then the fine increases when they go before the court. So right now the fine for ticket is $50 if I issue a violation ticket, but when you go before the court it's up to $500 you can pay. And so that's when the shock kicks in for them. So that's the way how we try to manage it right now.
And I think that since the statutory instrument for the seatbelt was introduced, that was in 1996. I mean, where it's so many years since then. I think
21 years.
I think that it's long overdue. That as long as you are a driver, that you should know now by this time that you should have been wearing your seatbelt. And I mean, as Mr. Williams mentioned, whilst you're on the checkpoint, you could literally see people hurrying to pull over their seatbelt, and think some of them just sit on the seatbelt, and as soon as they pass the checkpoint, they, and not realizing that I mean, this seatbelt can save my life.
For your own good.
Yeah. You know what? Well, we're gonna have to wrap up really soon. But before we do, I know that you mentioned earlier, Mavis, that the project encompasses a corridor between Belize and Belmopan, where the ring road is. Moving forward, where would be the next step? Because I know that in Belize City we have a lot of traffic violations. People feel like God on the road in Belize City. So what's the next move from here?
Well, as I mentioned, we are developing this longer term plan to put processes and policies in place that are going to encourage people to conform to better and safer road use. And a part of that has not only been the support of all the relevant line ministries within the central government, but all 9 municipalities are also working with our team here to develop road safety plans for their own communities. The issues are different in Orange Walk than they are in Punta Gorda than they are in Belize City. And so each of them, and in fact in the next couple of weeks while I'm here, I'll be visiting them. I worked with them last summer to help them get thinking about what are the priorities in their community. What can they do in their community? Because everybody lives in a community somewhere. And whether they drive on the highway between communities, they still live in a community somewhere. And so we have been working with communities and for all the different groups of people within communities to develop a plan themselves. So this next plan for 15 years to 2030 is broken down into short, medium and long term. And in the shortest term, which is the first 5 years, each of the municipalities and each of the line ministries has developed an operational plan to help them focus on the priorities. Now, some of the priorities are very basic. We need more equipment. We need more police equipment. We need more emergency responders. We need the materials to teach the curriculum in the schools. And they're all a bit different. And some of them are infrastructure related. Some of them are just putting sidewalks on the streets, or making the pedestrian crossings more visible. But it's up to each municipality to collaborate on what needs to be done in their own best interests.
All right, well, guys, it's been a pleasure having you on the set with us this morning discussing traffic. I'm pretty certain that those who are watching and listening have been enlightened by what is being shared here this morning with regards to ways to improve traffic and public safety.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, it's to talk about the police mentorship program. So stay tuned.